Thank you very much. I'm actually speaking from Beirut, Lebanon, and not from Frankfurt. I'm not sure if we're in a better position or a worse position than the people in Afghanistan at the moment. We have no electricity. I have 3 different internet connections welded together so I can actually make this presentation, and we have no fuel. What I want to point out from this is that the world is interconnected, whether we like it or not. One thing that happens in one part of the world affects the others in the other part of the world. And the greatest failing of corporate governance or of leadership is that we have no coherent plan at the moment. So I would say we are facing a global bankruptcy in leadership. And to compound that, the pandemic has underscored how vulnerable we all are. The Delta variant started out in India. Now it is the dominant variant in so many countries around the world. So what does that mean? How did we communicate about this pandemic? Was the communication successful, or was it a catastrophic failure? And if we look at where we are with 3rd waves and 4th waves, I would say the chips fall on the side of catastrophic failure. So what is it that happens to us when communication breaks down? There is uncertainty, there is fear of unpredictability and chaos. And when people face such a situation without a trusted source, without reliable data, they crave certainty and predictability and become victims of manipulation. It becomes very easy to spread misinformation and disinformation. So when we look at our modern world, this complex world, this world where we don't know what's going to happen next, whether we have an environmental crisis or some other political catastrophe, we have to ask ourselves, what are the risks we face when we go into a more digitally transformed world? And I would say there are 5 major risks that we face wherever we are on the planet. And the first of these is the availability of data and the reliability of that data. What happens if we have a catastrophic failure in data, in satellite systems? If we have a breakdown, where does that leave us? And how do we manage such a risk? The second major risk I believe we face is the unpredictability of human behavior. Over the last 20 years, we have produced through various decisions taken around the world, around 60 million refugees. Corruption has become exponential because of all the different policies to block and to limit. People become very resourceful when they find themselves cornered. And human unpredictability, I would say, poses the greatest threat to any kind of transformation or change, because people will find a way to get what they want and need and to have certainty, and it's not always going to be in a way that is productive. The third major risk that we are exposed to is what I would say is the supply chain system that we still look at in a very narrow focus. We're not looking at it in the complex cross-functional perspective that we need to look at it. And the world has become far too complicated for one person or a small group of people to be making decisions about a world that is so vastly changed and not well understood for them to be making decisions. One breakdown in transportation, a change in cross-cultural or cross-border legislation can change everything and knock us out of equilibrium. Number 4, I would venture to say, is the narrowing time frame of the appearance of disruptive technologies. These come in, and whatever we thought was predictable and that we were in control suddenly slips out of our hands. And last but not least is the failure of leadership. Our understanding of leadership is still still looks at the big strong person to protect us in a wild jungle, and that's not the case anymore. The world has changed. So what's happening is we have a fragmentation of leadership. People are beginning to take on their own solutions. You have a fractalization of the way communities begin to sort themselves out, so they have clarity and they have certainty and they have a trust in what's happening. So how do we actuate change in such a complex world? How do we do that? What needs to happen? And if we cannot create that impact, if we cannot get that attention, we become irrelevant. So the first question to ask is, who do we trust? Who are, if we look around us today, who are the credible leaders that are trusted, whether they are within the organization and the private sector or in the public sector? Who do we trust? Who do we believe? And if you don't trust that person who is speaking, that leader who's communicating, what is the meaning of that message? If that message is being filtered through the lens of mistrust, through the lens of considering that what they're saying is not really correct or accurate from a technical point of view, how effective are they going to be in having people overcome the natural resistance to change and innovation and adopt those changes when they don't understand them and cannot communicate them? I would venture to say the very slow adoption of new technologies is in no small part limited by poor communication. I call this source credibility. Unless the source of the communication is a trusted source, unless we believe that that source is one which is actually consistently telling us the truth, we don't buy into what is being said. And for a source to be credible, there are important requirements. The first is clarity. What is the message that you are actually communicating? Clear communication is a function of crystal clear thinking and focus. And the second piece in that credibility of the leader is consistency. Is that message consistent? Is that person's behavior congruent with their words and their deeds? And as a result, do we take them seriously? And finally, confidence. They inspire trust. So without that element of trust, it's very hard for a leader to communicate in any effective way. The second component is, do we know the audience? Right now, I'm speaking to you, I'm blind, I cannot see who I'm speaking to. I can't see your faces, I can't see your reactions. And 93% of communication has nothing to do with words. It has everything to do with our thoughts and emotions and how we process this and how we display that through our body language. And when we can't read that and can't respond to it, we're missing a very, very important part of what makes communication effective. To understand my audience, I need to understand the context in which they are about to experience any kind of transformation, digital or otherwise. What's the context? What's the situation? Why is it happening? What came before? Was it successful? Was it a failure when attempts to make change or introduce new technologies happened before? Second, what about the culture? And I'm not talking about the culture of a country, I'm talking about the culture of the organization. I have seen people struggle with a hierarchical organization or a matrix structure organization. And then they ask people, please, we want you to innovate. It's okay to make a mistake. It's not possible. It's contradictory. You cannot ask people to take risks and be innovative in a restrictive environment, in an environment where the general culture is more authoritarian, things are centralized. If people make mistakes, the cost is high. So understanding that culture is extremely important for you to be able to even formulate your message so it hits its target. And the third piece are the challenges, the real life challenges that people face, the things we're asking them to do. Are they doable? Do they perceive obstacles? What are the obstacles they perceive? And how do we talk about that in a way that gives them permission to try and do something different or something new? So I think we underestimate the power of impactful communication and the fact that unless we train people, unless we understand what it is that people want to hear and how they embrace change and how they become comfortable with it and nurture something that is popularly called a growth mindset. A growth mindset is a journey, it's an evolution. It's not something that just happens at one moment in time. And therefore, it's something that we need to begin to change within the culture of our organizations, because that's not what we have been educated to think and feel over many, many decades. What we offer at the International Consulting and Transformation Network are three areas of focus: leadership and leadership team development, because those people have the biggest impact on the organization. And when their communication is not aligned with where the organization is going, we have a problem. People will always follow the ones they perceive to hold the most power, whether they're right or wrong. The second thing we focus on is impactful leadership communication. Communication is complex. It's not about talking. And it's not about you. It's about your audience. Who are you talking to? And what messages do you need to deliver to them if you are going to have an impact? And third, we look at business EQ. There are 8 critical behaviors that determine whether or not the choices people make are going to be choices that support others, choices that support the direction that the organization is going in, and whether or not you can inspire that essential ingredient of trust to be able to have an impact. So this is my message. I have no PowerPoint presentation for you because I wasn't expecting to be in this event. And given the very difficult circumstances, it's very easy to say we have no electricity, but to live it and experience it and to know that any moment your connection could be broken is quite a different experience from just thinking about it in the abstract. So if anyone would like to ask questions, I'm open to questions. And thank you very much for listening, for taking this time to interact with this subject.
Thank you very much, Fay. Your applause from Frankfurt. Is there a question from the audience? We have time for one quick question. I don't think at the moment. I think, Fay, your contact details are in the think tank of this event also, and also on the conference agenda below Fay's photo. You find the Twitter, the link to the Twitter profile, to the LinkedIn profile, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of possibilities to get in touch with her after the event. So one more time, thank you, Fay, for taking the time. I know it was a journey to get to the event, and we were very glad that you were here and could share your thoughts. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We have put in a presentation that Michael is going to upload in the think tank, so I invite you to watch that. Thank you.